What's up guys, welcome to Wasted Space, and we're back in Space Engineers with another ship design, finally. I know I've been a bit remiss over Christmas, kind of not done so much in the way of ship design, so I thought it was finally time to bring you one of the new ones, in inverted commas, because this design, unfortunately, is kind of like a heli-carrier, and those have been pretty popular of late, but I decided to finish it anyway, because it's something that, firstly, I started just before Christmas, so it's been going on for a little while, but more, it's also something that's definitely got enough of my own design aspects in it that hopefully you guys will like it anyway. So the idea of this ship, and it very much has a specific focus and a specific thinking behind it, is that this is going to sit well above enemy bases and enemy targets and act as the kind of support base, but also some of the firepower for a main attack. So because of that, all of our weapons and all of our armour really is focused on the bottom side of the craft. So you can see it's all very, very heavily armoured, but we've also, this is where the concentration of the turrets are. And this is where our main weapon system is. So you can just about see a projector inside that door there. We're going to go over to that a bit later. The other thing I've done, and I've made sure I've done with the whole ship, is work on this idea of redundancy. So you can see down here there is a huge volume of conveyors. And that's because these are pretty exposed. But it does mean that with how this conveyor system is set up, I can take out any individual block, admittedly without mirroring on. I could take out any one of these individual blocks along here. It doesn't matter where or which. Even these ones on the sides, the entire system's going to function. Now you can see the turrets are just going off. That's because we're actually sat up over the top of an enemy base. So this is one of the drone bases from the Easy Start, you know, the main base thing. And they're occasionally sending up ships to try and give me trouble. And as you can see, they don't get very far. If anything, in fact, they kind of help us because they're slowly destroying their own base with wrecks. But either way, let's go in and give a quick tour around the inside of the ship, and then I can give a demonstration of it in action. So obviously up here we've got the sort of main runway, I guess, even though the drones that are on here, so these fighters, don't actually need a runway to take off or land. These things are capable of taking off and landing vertically. But it was the idea that if you ever needed to service a craft that did need a small runway, you had that option available to you. And you've got connections and everything on here to make sure you can refuel those. But we'll head down now around the sides of the craft, which is where the sort of entrance is, and this brings us around past the main hydrogen tanks, because of course you can see on the nacelles there we do have hydrogen thrust as well as atmospheric thrust, and brings us round into what is essentially engineering. So this is buried in the sort of deepest part of the ship I could to try and give it as much protection as possible. We come through these doors, these are all going to close automatically on a script, and we are immediately greeted by sort of where the weapon system sits inside the ship. And again, this was aimed at being kind of as well defended as it could be, while still needing to obviously be able to get out of the craft at the bottom. But we'll move on to that a bit later. We'll just turn around, that obviously goes out the other side, and this is where the main engineering is. And I'm really pleased with how some of the inside of this ship looks. I don't normally go so far as to put all the lighting and the coloration and so on. Normally I tend to finish my designs a bit earlier than this. So I'm just kind of pleased how, with a bit of lighting, you can create some cool shadows and some cool effects. So back here we've got all the reactors, all the power, batteries, gyros, refineries, assemblers, oxygen generation, hydrogen tanks, oxygen tanks, you name it, it's all tucked in here. Doesn't look like there's much here, but trust me, it is very well tucked in. And again, there's this idea of multiple conveyor systems giving us redundancy. So you can take a hit anywhere in this ship and it won't finish it off. The final thing to do is go up to sort of the bridge section, which is up this staircase, and it kind of comes in multiple stages. So you've got a sort of mezzanine floor here, which enables you to get at your cargo containers, but also go up to kind of a mini forward bridge. This is one level down from the main one, and this is where I picture either drone pilots or turret control people sitting. So you'd sit in these chairs and actually actively control some of the turrets on the bottom, which is why you've got ammo readouts on the screen here. And then we can go back down the stairs into the back area, or I'm going to go around the sides here, which kind of leads to the same place, but not quite. Open these ones up, and this sort of looks down over what is the main support area. So we've got room for 4 drone pilots, and then plenty of information about the status of the ship, your med bays, and a bit of view outside, of course. And then finally up to the main bridge, we've got these little battery display screens. One of these is for the drones outside, and one of these is for the batteries actually in this vessel, which is this one. You'll notice that this one here only says total batteries 1. That's because this kind of freaks out when you unplug the drones. As soon as you plug them back in again, though, this will all update and tell you properly how the drone's charge status is. And then we can go up to the bridge, which I kind of like the view of. You know, you're not perfect, but good enough, and you can certainly get into a seat and fly from here. So the final bit really before we do any flying around is to talk about how you'd use this in a fight. So we've got these drones on the front, they're all well and good, but you need some weapons yourself, which is what that weapon system on the bottom is all about. So I get the camera out, we just change the bars slightly because I know these are wrong. The bottom here will have a timer to start that whole thing off, and that's pretty much the only ones I needed. I need that timer and I need a camera. We can also go and get the group here, which is responsible for opening and closing our doors, and we also have a group here for the hydrogen thrusters. So we can turn those on and off as well. And then there are a few other bits, turrets, for example, toggles your turrets on and off. Not really necessary for this demonstration. So the first thing I'll show is if I turn off the hydrogen thrusters, we stay where we are. So they are not a necessity, they are a performance increase. So you have options regarding those. But let's jump into the camera and you can see we're kind of loosely set up over the top of this pirate base here. We've got a stinging adversary just about to get blown out of the sky, and I do enjoy watching these things get blown out of the sky from above. But while he does so, you can see that this is sort of set up inside that drone bay, and it's designed to be your bomb camera. So all we're going to do is kind of look down, try and get our ship, so you can use the whatever you want to call it, the sort of gravity indicator to try and get yourself as upright as possible. Goodbye, stinging adversary. So try and line yourself up so you're completely level with the ground underneath. And you can do that using this horizon indicator. And then we're just going to kind of use the WAS and D keys to target this bomb. Now, I happen to know with these bases that there are a few places that are really, really good to hit. So just first up, we'll take a quick test shot. Oh, thank you very much, Mr. What was that, a stinging adversary? That worked very nicely for us. But this corner here is one of them, and all we're going to need to do is line up our shot there, and you kind of use the indicator in between your horizon and your altitude indicator to get a target. And we're just going to hit one, and that's going to start welding up this projection. Now, originally I had the doors open and close at each stage of this procedure, but it slowed everything down so much that I kind of took it away. But you'll see here, what it's done is printed this projectile, and that projectile is going to twist slightly to try and point better downwards. That side of things doesn't work perfectly for some reason. There's something a bit weird with timers and groups right now. And then as it goes down, you'll see the turrets are going to shoot the hell out of it, but it's not really going to do very much. It's heavy armor filled with decoys. The idea being that you fill it with decoys, your fighters have got plenty to worry about sort of distracting for them. And at the same time, you can see this is sitting down inside the base, still getting shot at. And depending on where you hit, that can be really beneficial. It basically means that they start doing some of the work for you. So I just adjusted my shot there a little bit by pointing the horizon and the altitude indicator at where our shot landed. And then readjust again, and I can now take another one. And these can be shot pretty quickly, and hopefully this one does the twist thing a bit better. It seems to be a little bit variable how well it does that, and I don't really understand why. The timers have all been set up. I spent a while with some friends trying to figure it out, but it's not vital. The bombs still work quite nicely anyway. As you can see, I'm just a little bit off with how we've got this thing set up. We're twisted over to a side a little bit. So again, we just need to line the target up with our projectile. Oh, no, we still hit exactly where we wanted. So you notice there was a really big explosion there. There is actually some warheads in the corner of that base. But you get an idea of how this could be sitting here providing support from well outside of turret range, while the fighters and the turrets on this thing protect it. And this base down here is, for all intents and purposes, helpless to do anything about it without sending out ships to deal with me. So I'll just take another couple of really quick shots just to demonstrate how hopefully this thing works pretty reliably. It's not very expensive, it's just lumps of armour and decoys, which are pretty cheap to do, and you'll notice it's a small ship, so that intrinsically makes it cheaper as well. So a couple more test shots, and then I'll quickly show you how this thing actually performs and how it handles. And for that, I'm going to have to load up another map, because unfortunately, the drones on the front, as you guys will know, connectors and landing gear eventually break and don't hold them anymore. And the end result of that is they come off and destroy the ship. But hey, that would be solved by having pilots for them. You can see these things are nice and effective, and if we just jump into spectator view now, we can go down and have a quick look at exactly how much damage we've been dealing. Now remember, this has been helped by the fact I know where to shoot on this base. There are weaker points, there are stronger points, and I've definitely been shooting at some of the weaker points. But you can see how this has dealt some pretty severe damage to this main structure here on both sides, just with some very simple projectiles. In fact, we've even managed to get through the heavy armour into near the antenna, so I don't think it would take very many shots left to completely take this base out. The other thing you can choose to do if you want, you're thinking, but I want to keep that base intact. Well, this is precise enough that if we get into this view, zoom ourselves in, we can also use it just to take out these little turrets, for example. So yeah, this looks like this was aimed just about right, and that'll take out both of those turrets for us. Oh, sadly, I only took out one, but you can see how if we landed that just right, we would take out both of the turrets there. We might even have taken the other one out just by disconnecting it from the conveyor network itself. And then you can kind of get an idea of how these things might work as another stinging adversary comes in for a visit. Well, just before finishing up, I wanted to talk about a couple of things about this craft still. So firstly, manoeuvrability. This thing weighs about 4.5 million kilograms, so it is pretty heavy, but at the same time, you've got about 4 times as much thrust as you really need. The hydrogen thrusters are there specifically to try and give you a bit of an edge when it comes to movement. But because of how everything's laid out with the thrusters, you have no downwards thrusters, you have very little as far as braking thrusters is concerned. It's all been designed to make use of those 4 big nacelles. And so you fly it very much like a plane. It's about banking into corners to make use of those big things. Or even using those big nacelles as braking forces when need be. And you've got enough gyros to kind of pull off those maneuvers. Basically, you can do pretty much what you want in that respect. Plenty maneuverable. And at the same time, it gives you the redundancy you need for the other question. And that is to do with how sturdy, how reliable these things are going to be in a combat situation when your 4 big engines are sticking off on tiny little pods off the side of your main ship. So hopefully I can demonstrate this a bit with some pre-recorded video, but basically you only need one of those pods working for this thing to actually fly. Not only that, but they are far more resilient than you think they would be. The heavy armor backbone to this ship seems to have dramatically improved how resilient it is, way beyond what you would expect just from a few bits of heavy armor. So those nacelles themselves are primarily light, but a couple of bits of heavy on there have made a massive difference to how tough they are. So as hopefully you can see from this, you can lose most of those engine nacelles and still be pretty effective in a fight. At the same time, when you do have all those engine nacelles, you're pretty maneuverable for a ship this size. So I hope you enjoyed this one, guys. It's kind of a little bit different and also, unfortunately, another heli-carrier / airbase type design, but they're kind of fun to build, so don't hate me too much. If you did like it, please hit like, please hit subscribe. It really does help me and the channel out. And of course, this is all up on the workshops. If you want to check it out, information's down in the video description just below. And if you didn't like this video, let me know why. Let me know how I can improve. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I will catch you next time.